Well, I think obviously we need to improve health and care services and support for carers in North Norfolk. We have one of the oldest populations in the country. More people are requiring care and support, and we need to ensure we have the resources to do that. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is by having a Labour government investing in the National Health Service and the social care system. Labour has promised to invest an additional £37 billion in the next government into the NHS and a further £8 billion into the care system, and I think that will make a big difference, but it's only a start. What Labour is also looking at is setting up a national care service, which obviously carers will be very heavily involved with and supported by, and that national care service needs to be integrated with the NHS so that we have a whole system which puts people, whether they're older people, disabled people, and their carers, family carers, at the heart of the system.
One of the things that our audience have been talking about is more a situation rather than heroically giving care unpaid, is actually being paid, supported and trained. And they argue that this would put them in a better position to provide better care and also actually would save the state money in the longer term. How much of that could be done, for example, with this National Care Service?
Well, I think the National Care Service has to listen to carers and has to involve carers and engage carers from the very beginning in developing the plans for a National Care Service. The system in this country would collapse, as we know, without the involvement of family carers. I think the latest figures are something like £130 billion worth of care being provided by family carers. So, that's the starting point. But things could be much better if we properly supported carers. And I think one of the ways, as you suggest, is by training carers, but also enabling them to earn an income through their caring responsibilities. But there are many other ways which I think we can do that, whether it's through better advice and information on the one hand, enabling carers to work, and particularly through flexible employment, and ensuring that carers get that kind of emergency support when there is a crisis, and good respite care as well.
One of the criticisms that's often levelled at the Labour Party is you haven't costed your proposals. Well, this time there is a costing document alongside the manifesto. How confident are you that if Labour was elected to power, that you'd be able to fulfil these sorts of promises in the manifesto, like the National Care Service?
I'm extremely confident about it. I think the manifesto is very exciting, and as you say, the manifesto is fully costed. We're a rich country here, about the fifth richest nation in the world. We should be able to afford a decent health and care system. Labour's going to do it by ensuring that we don't actually raise taxes for 95% of people on low and middle incomes. What we'll be doing is ensuring that the richest individuals and the rich corporations in this country actually pay their fair share of tax and cut down on tax avoidance and evasion as well.
One of the main points that the Lib Dems are making is about parity of esteem between physical health and mental health. How far do you go along with that?
Well, that's very important, and Labour certainly has campaigned for parity of esteem as well, and the last Labour government was working in that direction. Clearly there's still a lot that needs to be done to achieve that, nationally as well as locally. In Norfolk we have real problems with our mental health trust in terms of serious case incidents, in terms of numbers of suicides, but also the fact that a lot of people actually have to move miles and miles away from Norfolk for their care.
In terms of social care, that's probably the issue that's our listeners are most concerned about, and obviously it's for the Conservatives to explain their manifesto promise in relation to social care funding. But what sort of view do you bring to it?
On the funding, do you mean? Yes. Okay. I think the Tories have started in the wrong place. Actually, what we need is a new vision for social care in the country. The Tories have actually gone to how are we going to help people pay for care, or how are we going to shift the burden of paying for care onto individuals. What we need to see is a new care system altogether. And once we've worked out how that might work, then we could actually look at how that's funded. I would like to see it funded through taxation. That's still the fairest way of raising money in this country, and it'd be a much fairer way of doing it than putting the onus onto individuals who happen to be unfortunate enough to, for instance, have dementia.
So you'd be looking perhaps for a parity of esteem between the way NHS patients are dealt with and the way people in the social care system are dealt with.
If we're going to achieve true integration of health and care, then we have to achieve integration of the funding of health and care. And the only way we can do that properly is to move away from two different systems of funding, one of which is means tested and one of which is through taxation and free at the point of need, into one system. And I would like to see that the NHS system applying to both health and social care. That's the long-term aim, and clearly that's something the National Care Service would need to work towards.
There's considerable pressure year on year, it seems, in relation to benefits, and the eligibility criteria seem to get increased and increased, and carers particularly becoming worried about that, about their carers allowance, whether it'll continue or whether they'll even get it if they're not getting it now. What sort of assurances can you give our listeners should Labour be elected?
Well, Labour has already pledged to increase carers allowance. We would do that by £10 a week on top of the £62.70 currently in terms of carers allowance. But we need to look much more broadly. We need to look at the criteria for carers allowance. We need to look at other financial support that carers could benefit from. I truly believe that actually if carers can work, then obviously they're going to be better off, and we need to ensure that it's much easier for carers to work and they get the support they need to do that as well. What we do know is that carers' finances are really, really tight and getting squeezed almost by the day. People are finding it harder and harder, and that's why I think that the Tories' proposal for a year's unpaid leave for carers is unrealistic for virtually every carer that I know. No one has the money to be able to take a year off unpaid from work. That's why they're working in the first place. They need the income. I don't know any carers who are going to be able to take that unpaid leave for a year, and I hope the Tories reconsider that as well as their other proposals for funding social care.
And in terms of that, to what extent would you interpret it as the Conservatives not really understanding what it is to be a carer?
Well, I think their proposal suggests that there are lots of unintended consequences, and therefore I don't think they've really discussed their plans with carers and carers' organisations, and that way they would have tested these things out properly.
And finally, if we move forward to election day, and you find yourself elected to represent the constituency of North Norfolk, you have your first surgery, and this is against the background of increasing pressure on people to get back to work or to keep working. So there's a pressure there, and someone comes to you who's a carer, who's been caring unpaid for some time, and is feeling guilty about falling out of love with the person they're caring for, and has on occasions been criticised for this by professionals. But they've got a job offer they've got to answer by the Monday afterwards. What would you say to them?
Well, I would hope that they'd be able to take up the job. That's the first thing. But then of course, we've got to ensure that they've got the support in place to enable them to do that. And I think we need to ensure that Labour government acts quickly on terms of increasing support for carers. That's absolutely crucial. And that means not only employers being a lot more flexible about the way they employ people and providing kind of emergency leave and so on, but it means actually care services being available and being reliable in every local community. That's critical. And carers tell me all the time that that's their number one request, is they want to have really good, really effective care services where they live, and that would then give them peace of mind, and that people will be able to then go and work as well.